Kevin, a Newport lad.
Correct.
We've also read you're an internationally renowned wedding photographer, doing weddings here at home and destination weddings. A champion of the mirrorless camera systems, we can call it that. And an official Fuji X photographer.
Yep.
So what happened there then? Where's Newport in that story?
Well, Newport is where I was born and brought up, and I was there until I was around 18, went to university, headed off to Bournemouth, where I studied management and economics and business studies and all that kind of stuff. Although Bournemouth actually is a really very well-renowned art, especially for film and TV. I think they've had a couple of Oscars or Oscar generating students there. So I did business and management and economics and all that kind of stuff there. From there, I headed off to my placement. It was a 4-year course, and my placement was at Microsoft in Reading. So I headed off there for a year, and then I went back to Microsoft at the end of the university degree. That in turn led me to London, where I worked for a company creating. It was kind of it wasn't before the internet, but before websites were really popular. So I was building applications and business management tools and things like that. Then I became a contractor and started working for people like Deutsche Bank, ING Barings, BT, Salomon Brothers, starting to build their website-based systems, online stuff. And I moved from there. My business, I was working for myself then, and my business moved it more towards online marketing for people like Grosvenor, PepsiCo. Did a lot of stuff for them. And in the end, it became a little bit of a chore. My wife and I had moved to the West Country at that point, moved back towards Wales, but didn't quite reach. And, I was getting on the train at 5:15 every morning. I was getting home at, 8:30 every night. This was 2008, 2009. And the train fare, my monthly train fare was £890 a month. That was then. Heaven knows what it would be now, but probably well over £1,000. It was expensive. It was tiring, and I wasn't really spending any time with the family. We'd had a new baby at that point. And so, that's really what led me to the photography route. Up until that point, 2009, I'd never been interested in photography. I'd never even, it's not true to say I wasn't interested in it, but I had no skills. I didn't own a camera. I still recognized work that I really appreciated. Would always, the work like Jane Bowen and stuff like that in the Sunday supplements. I would always gravitate towards that without necessarily understanding anything about photography. And so one day I was sat on the train coming back from London reading an article about a wedding photographer, and I thought to myself, well, maybe this is the answer. It can't be that difficult. Famous last words. And so I went home and I said to my wife, this is what I'm going to do. And she kind of looked at me and said, well, yeah, maybe, but you don't own a camera and you're really quite grumpy and you probably won't be very good at that. So maybe we need to think about something else. But I tried it, and I went on some. I actually did a few kind of workshops before I even shot a wedding. There's a very good documentary wedding photographer up in the north called Jeff Askoff. I went on one of his workshops, and I kind of went that way and just started shooting. My business background helped immensely at that time. I put a website together. I marketed myself. In those days and this was only 5-6 years ago, really. There was probably not 1 in 4 people on the planet was a wedding photographer. As it is now, it's very difficult. Everybody claims to be a wedding photographer. So it was a bit easier to be seen in the crowd, and the website helped, and the marketing helped. So I got traction pretty much straight away. And since I've done 350 weddings since then, something like that.
So really, what are we talking about? 2008, 2009 was you Dying both feet in, or did you stay on the day job?
No, I switched it off completely.
Wow.
I had a contract with who was it with? It was Grosvenor in Mayfair, and that was coming to the end. And actually, they said, you know what, we can. We're happy for you to work from home if you like, and come into London when you need to. But I thought, no, this is the time. I'm going to do it. Otherwise, you'll never do it. I'm a big believer in, if you have a ambition, or it's easier to achieve something once you start it. If you just keep thinking, I'm going to do this, it's harder to actually start it. Start things and then you'll finish them, or at least you'll try them. So yeah, I did my first wedding on August 9th, 2009. And I'd finished with Grosvenor, wrapped up the business. I switched the business off that I was running in London. That finished the previous April. So yeah, there was no overlap whatsoever. There wasn't really even any kind of money left over to, it was a case of it has to work. If it doesn't work, then I'll have to go back to doing what I was doing. And I just really didn't want to do the whole commute, and I didn't not enjoy what I was doing, but the commute, the cost of it, the constant treadmill. Now where I live here in Malmesbury, which is, it's a beautiful little market town, everybody knows everybody. We all see each other, we all smile, we all look at each other. In London, it just wasn't like that. It's a terrifying place now when I go back, even though I lived there for 15 years. And London's great, but if you're just going there in the morning to work and you're coming back at night, it's it's just this behemoth of people and stuff and noise and craziness. I'm definitely a quieter type person. And whilst Newport was never really a small market town, Malmesbury has been home now for the last kind of 10 years or so. And it really has, making that career change has made me appreciate the finer things in life. And certainly I made that decision certainly not based on the fact that I was going to make more money, because that's not the case. I make enough to live off. I'm comfortable. But I never made the decision to become a photographer to start driving Porsches and and have really fancy holidays 6 times a year. I have very the family are the most important thing, and I've built my business so that I spend as little time on it as possible without it being mercenary, and as much time as possible out of it. And it's great, I take the kids to school, I pick them up from school, we go on. I don't work in August, for example, which is really peculiar for a wedding photographer. But, I made the decision while the children are really young. I block out August, I block out half terms, and I just don't work them. I don't do it. If it's in the diary, it's blocked out, it's blocked out. Mm-hmm. It means that I have to make make hay in other directions, other times of the year. But it's that was the decision to spend time with the family. I've got loads and loads of friends in the industry who, especially during the summertime, they run around like headless chickens. Mm. And the way that I see photography, and especially kind of wedding and social photography, is you become you choose this type of career. It's a vocational selection. Yeah, I don't think anybody goes to school and when they're 14 they go to their career teacher and go, I want to be a wedding photographer. I just it just doesn't happen. You might want to be a photographer, you might want to be a commercial photographer or fashion photographer, but generally I think people fall into photography either by accident or through sheer love. And then, by inference, that means it's a vocation. Okay, so you must be doing it for the love of it, rather than necessarily the capitalist earnings. And of course, you need to make the business work. But at the same time, if you're not enjoying it because you're stressed, or the business isn't working, or you're taking pictures that you don't want to take, then you've got to look at the reasons why you're in it in the first place. That's really important to me, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of don't go away from the type of photography that I enjoy shooting for my clients. And there's always pressure to do that. There's pressure from the industry, there's pressure from certain clients, there's certainly pressure from clients before they book. And I never want to go to a wedding and come back thinking, I hated that. I mean, sometimes it happens, of course. Sometimes you have bad days at the office, but generally, I wake up and I think, yeah, you know what, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to shoot today the way I want to shoot. I'm going to hopefully deliver pictures that the clients want. It's never an issue to be. I never want to be in this situation that I know a lot of people are in, where, you know, it's all stress and anger and hatred and, you know, this ball of anxiety as wedding photographers, because they've got to do the editing. The clients are asking for this, and they're asking them to do shots that they don't want to shoot, and, you know, they've got to do their website and their marketing and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm a big believer in pushing away stuff that I don't want. So my website and my brand is built not only to attract people who want my style of photography, but as equally important, it's there to push away people, to filter out the people who don't want it. And I think that works quite well. I think probably, I mean, I don't know, there's no scientific figure, but I'm guessing for every one person that picks up the phone and says, you know, Kev, we really like your pictures and we'd like to book you, there's probably 20, 30, 40, maybe more, who go to the website and think, yeah, I like these, but it's not what we want. But then I never hear from them. And so that time in my business isn't wasted. I'm not wasting time at meetings and trying to persuade people that they want something that they actually don't.
So going back, was that, it sounds like quite an abrupt, life-defining sort of moment to give up the city, tech career, I guess, when really at a time when the web was still on its way up, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was doing some quite major websites, and a part of that was the online branding and marketing and kind of SEO elements of things. In those days, and remember, we're only talking 2007, 2008. You're right. It was all on the way up. This whole idea of SEO, search engine optimization, etc., was very. It was mostly unknown to most people.
Black art.
It was very much a black art. It was very much a case of doing things dirty to try and get Google to rank you. And of course, it's completely opposite these days. And so, yeah, I kind of gave up all of that stuff. I had I had a lot of experience in that area, and IT, and I had all the Microsoft development exams. I had all of those under my belt, and a lot of the guys at the time that I knew were, they were taking on bigger projects and much more work and much more development stuff, and I found myself moving towards or being interested more in marketing and branding and online stuff rather than the technical coding element of things. And I think as you tend to get older, certainly in that industry, you find that managers are ex-coders, for example. They tend to move away from the technology, obviously not all the time, but generally because they become more interested in the business side of things, perhaps, or they can't keep up with all of the technology. And it's interesting because it's at the same time Adobe were reducing the cost of their what was called Creative Suite at the time, I think. It used to cost like $4,500 to get Photoshop and Illustrator and all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly it was really cheap. It was really accessible, especially to students. If you were a student, you could get it for a couple of £100. And what happened in the web design industry was that all of a sudden there was bedroom coders. They had access to the software. Hosting was really cheap all of a sudden. They were producing good stuff, but they were going to school on a Monday, or they were eating pizza in their mum's basement, and the whole industry was caving in to that kind of stuff. And then you had the Indian outsourcing of work, that had implications from an economical point of view. So things were changing dramatically in the industry, and I kind of recognized that. And at the same time, I also realized that I didn't, I'd never worked for anybody other than myself since I was 24. I worked for Microsoft for 1 year after I left university, and then after that I worked for myself, and I realized that I just couldn't work. I couldn't go and work in be managed, if you like. And so it was a case of, right, okay, something needs to change dramatically. What are you going to do? And we were moving. My wife and I decided to move, and we weren't staying in London. We couldn't afford to stay in London. So, it wasn't just a case of move the business, move what I was doing in London to here, because there is no business here for that. And, I didn't want to come here and then do the same thing, traipsing into Bristol every day, or traipsing into Cardiff or Bath or Swindon. I wanted a complete lifestyle change. It was a gamble. It was a big gamble. But, hopefully, so far it's worked out.
I mean, it may sound like an obvious question, but how important was that, having that area of marketing online sussed, being a black art practitioner, if you like, with the SEO side, of you from day one getting yourself online and marketing yourself as a wedding photographer?
It was hugely important, and I often say to people that being a professional, anything, whether it's a wedding photographer, whether you're a corporate photographer, or whether you're a plumber, I think 95% of your time is business and 5% is actually doing stuff. So, I shoot a wedding on Saturday. I've got a wedding coming for 8 hours. But here, I'm doing my website, I'm doing marketing, I'm answering emails, I'm, putting contracts together and all that kind of stuff. I'm educating myself, and really the business element of stuff is far more important than the shooting. And of course, clients need to like your pictures. That's paramount. But in the first place, you need to get them to find your pictures, and that's where the business comes into it. But yeah, the online stuff, the website and the SEO, I've always been an advocate of what I would call clean SEO, or SEO with integrity, rather than trying to fool people to come to your website. I've always been an advocate of doing it the way that Google wants you to do it, and it's always been the same. Google have never changed their web guidelines, if you like. They've always been the same. It's just they've changed the algorithm to try and filter out the people who try and cheat it. So if you didn't try and cheat it, then you'll be all right. But a lot of people did, back in those days. Lots of stuff worked to get you up the rankings quicker. Google didn't like it and they would complain, but the reason they would complain was because it would work, and so people would do it. And it was this ever increasing circle. And you remember if you typed in something like a cottage in West Wales or something, all you'd get is just rubbish directories, and you'd have to dig deep into Google to find anything of any relevance. Now you do it, you get the right stuff straight away. So Google has cleaned up the search engines a lot. And I think regardless of the business, whatever it is, whether it's wedding photography or, commercial photography, you need to be on top of all of that stuff now. And if it's something that you can't deal with, then you certainly need somebody in your trusted circle to do it. And I say trusted circle because it's very easy for people to say that they will do this for you, marketing, SEO, etc., and then they go down the route of the black hat stuff, and then the rug is pulled out from under your feet by Google, and businesses can fail.
So for the photographer listening who is passionate about making images, realises they perhaps need to do a bit more in terms of marketing themselves online, do you want to just describe that whole thing about the content, and the investment of time, I guess, as well, and the approach you take in content on your sites to make it work, and how you do that?
So the most important thing, I think, for anybody who wants to, who needs to do this marketing element of it, is you have to enjoy it. You have to have a passion for your own business. You have to have a passion for your own work. And if you have that, then you will enjoy putting blog posts together. You will enjoy putting content together. You'll enjoy writing articles, etc. Until that enjoyment comes, then you will struggle. So that's the very first thing. Put yourself in a situation where you can actually enjoy doing it. And if that means you have to learn how to use WordPress or learn how to use your content management system, then do it. Don't struggle with it. Bat that out of the park straight away. Get rid of the challenges. Once you've got over the hurdles, then you can start enjoying what you're doing. So I blog and I write content on my website probably 3 times a week. Doesn't actually take that long these days. I'm quite used to the way I do it. I do it in a very formulaic way. But if for example, yesterday I did a wedding blog post, and I do probably one of those every couple of weeks, a full wedding. Probably takes an hour and a half of my time, including prepping the images, writing the content. The social media element of it also is included in that. But I enjoy it. I actually look forward to doing it. So, one of the things that I do when I leave the office tonight, I'll write a list of things that I need to do tomorrow. I actually have it on my computer. And what I try and do is I put the stuff that I don't want to do first on that list. Seriously, it's a very simple thing, but it works. And if you're, if you can give yourself the control to do it in order that you've written it, and what happens is you do the boring stuff first. So, for example, every morning I update my bank statements or my online accounts, and I do my mileage. Sometimes obviously I don't have any mileage, but doing the account stuff takes 5 minutes if you do it on a daily basis. If you leave it until the 30th of January, you're going to be in a whole world of pain. So I do it, and it's done. It's done first thing I do again in the morning. And then the web stuff, the marketing, the SEO stuff, generally comes towards the end of the day when, all of the stressy stuff's gone, hopefully. I can sit back, I can relax, and I can enjoy it. And it's honestly, I can't tell you how many people I've spoke to and they go, yeah, but, it's all right for you. I hate doing this kind of stuff. And my answer to them is, well, I hate doing accounts, and that's why I've got an accountant. I hate doing my, logo design and physical graphic branding. That's why I outsource it. You don't have to do everything. We have this terminology in the wedding photography world, Uncle Bob. And this Uncle Bob is the guy that comes to the wedding with his own camera and basically gets in your way and does everything and annoys you. And clients sometimes will rely on Uncle Bob to get their wedding pictures. And I often say to people in the industry that, we are the Uncle Bobs of other industries. So by hacking around at your accounts or by hacking at a logo design and spending 3 weeks designing a logo that's rubbish at the end of it, you're the Uncle Bob of the logo design industry. And you don't get anywhere. So, realize what you're good at, realize what you're not good at, outsource the stuff, or become good at something if you can. But the most important thing, honestly, when it comes to the content, when it comes to writing about your own stuff, is that you have to enjoy it. You have to be proud of your work too. That's really important. The wedding photography world is as is all of the photography world, is a very, obviously it's a very visual industry, and also there's all kinds of eyes on you from, not your clients, but everybody else, anybody else who sees you as a competitor or sees you as a local person or whatever, they're going to be looking at your pictures. So don't ever worry about putting pictures online. Never think about your peers is the point I'm making. Always think about your future clients when you're using when you're putting stuff together on your website. If you do that and you're proud of your work, then put it up there. Don't worry about what other people think. For example, I once had a conversation with somebody who said, a photographer who said, yeah, I really like your pictures, but there's a whole load of hugging and all that kind of stuff going on. And on the very same day, I had a call from a potential client. She said, I love your pictures. I love all the hugging and all that kind of stuff. And, and I know for a fact that people, that's what they like. The clients like that. I don't care really what other photographers think about it. Of course, it's nice to be recognized, but it's at the same time, I'm not making money from them. It's far more important that the clients are, you're putting something in front of the clients that A, you want to shoot, and B, they want to receive. And so, that's kind of a style-defining thing, I suppose. But at the end of the day, you have to be happy with it. If you're not confident with your own stuff, for either physically, artistically, or from a business point of view, nobody else will be confident in it either. So,
I guess that determination, and you realise the importance of revisiting some of those weddings, some of that work. I guess the easy ones are the ones that have just passed, from a few weeks back.
Yeah.
But do you find yourself appreciating and reviewing your work more by having to go in and verbalise and describe it for other audiences?
It's quite interesting, really, that you mentioned a couple of weeks. So I actually typically don't blog weddings for around about 9 months after the wedding. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously they get edited and it goes to the clients. But in real terms, this time of the year now before Christmas is when, as a wedding photographer point of view, people should be really populating their content, putting their website together. Because January and February time is the busy inquiry period. That's a statistical fact. If you go into WH Smith's on New Year's Day, you'll see loads of bridal magazines. And it's because people choose to they put off planning their wedding until after Christmas. And, they get to 2016 and they think, oh my word, the wedding's in 2016, we've done no planning. So it makes sense to, I kind of backlog most of the wedding blogs until the winter months. Because Google is hungry for the stuff then. Clients are hungry for the stuff then. And most other wedding photographers have done it all in the summer when it's having less impact. So from a business point of view, that makes sense. But also, it's a time thing. In the summertime, I'm busy shooting weddings. I'm busy on holiday. It's less important. And so, I use kind of every single inquiry I get, I note down. So I can look very easy at statistics, and it tells me that, January, February, if I'm going to do any kind of paid marketing or I'm going to do any marketing whatsoever, that's when I'm going to do it. So I use the statistics that I've got in the business to educate me about this stuff. And when it comes to so the wedding I did yesterday was from March, for example. I do them all in order. None of them get missed off. And so I'm up to like the early this year's weddings. And when you look at the pictures, it does take you right back. And because of the way that I shoot in a documentary style, there is no, I don't have to just put loads of group shots and stuff online. It's hopefully storytelling stuff. And it does, because I was there at that moment in time where the picture was taken, I can usually generally remember it. But on that point about reviewing your past work, of course, I was doing some stuff for a panel I've entered, and I was looking at some pictures from 5-6 years ago, and they're very, very different, very different. And I think that's quite a diplomatic way of saying it. But it's a good thing. And hopefully in 5 years' time, my pictures then will be very different to my pictures now. Hopefully a lot better. But it's constant reviewing, constant, also constant worrying about how you're getting on. But really, you've got to really, really take the bull by the horns. Love the stuff. I put 60 pictures online yesterday, and my criteria for a picture that I put on my website is if it makes me smile. As long as it makes me smile, then it makes the cut. And that's pretty much it.
One of the it's interesting that this thing about going back and revisiting work. One of the things we've touched on with a couple of other photographers, interestingly, guys who shoot film or have in the past shot film, they kind of lament that they didn't keep a journal or keep some information on what they'd shot, where it was, in that folder in eggs or contact sheets. But in your world and where you've come from, and I've heard you speak before about this, but do you want to just describe the importance of the modern day journal, the metadata, the time you invest in the images while you've done your selects?
Okay, so if we are talking about a wedding, then it's you'll often shoot a lot more pictures than you're going to give the client. I haven't actually checked this, but I'm guessing my hit rate is probably 1 in 3. So if I deliver them 400 pictures, I'm probably pressing a button 1,200 times on a wedding day. And so you do end up with a lot of pictures. You end up with a lot of pictures that you're not going to actually do anything with. I use Photon Mechanic as my culling tool, which is much quicker than Lightroom. And I just literally whip through the images. I don't actually do any keywording or anything, because the way that I organize my Lightroom workflow is that at the end of once the wedding is completed, and also this is true for my street photography and any kind of other work, it all goes into a large finals Lightroom catalog, which is archived by year, by month, by project. And so for weddings, I don't really need to know venue. I never need to worry about where venues are and things like that. I can always look that up and go to it straight away. But for the kind of street photography and everything like that, then I will bring them into Lightroom and keyword them there. I don't do any of that stuff in Photon Mechanic. And when you're shooting project-based stuff rather than wedding-based stuff, it is more important to keep track of it. Up until about 2 years ago, I wasn't really doing any of that stuff, and you do get frustrated. And even actually just stuff running around the house with the kids and everything. So many pictures you take on your phone and everything, it just gets lost. It just goes into the cloud or it goes onto your computer. And whilst I have all of those images, sometimes, I often find myself searching by camera, because I can nearly always remember what camera I use to take pictures. So I use that metadata to dig into it. But, from a wedding point of view, I don't really need to worry about it. I'm not fussed on that. But certainly kind of the project-based, documentary or street photography stuff, it is more important to track it. One of the things I'm really conscious of is overshooting. And so when I'm out on the street shooting, I give myself very defined projects, which means that, it could just be very simple. It could be the color red, for example. And that means by giving yourself, you're galvanizing yourself to really shoot less and, shoot less and deliver more, really, because, you're becoming an observer, which is something that I talk about all the time. I don't really refer to it as being a photographer as such. I'm kind of an observer, certainly for weddings. Anybody can press the button on the camera, but you have to look and watch and see. But yeah, from an archival point of view, it's something that, I think in a few years' time I'll probably wish I'd done slightly different, as everybody does, I think. But I'm happy with it. It's all there. It's all kind of accessible and reachable. I never shot with film, so I don't have any of those issues, and I also don't have the worries that may have been introduced to people in those days.
Ever been tempted?
I have film cameras. I have them. I have some stuff up there. Yeah. And I've shot with them. I've shot with them. I have gone out and shot with them. I would never shoot a wedding with them because, the way I shoot in documentary style, it's there are going to be photographers out there who could do it. Absolutely. I'm not one of those people. Definitely not. I need to have confidence that the images that I'm getting are exposed correctly and stuff.
What's your view? Just interesting. There are a couple to try and, I guess, and I can understand it, differentiate themselves in the very saturated field of wedding photography. Mm-hmm. There are the modern day. Some of them are younger photographers who are, I guess, are trying to offer. And we'll talk about Fuji in a minute. The Instax,
mm-hmm.
The old Polaroid feel, or they're maybe saying, "I'll guarantee you a roll of 35mm."
Mm-hmm.
For that, it's almost like they're touching on those heartstrings of the, the proper analog, the real photography almost. But God, that's got to be slowing them down all day.
Well, it will be, and I always think that it all goes back to this vocational thing, right? And I think that if people are offering these, and they're not necessarily gimmicks, they could well be something that they're really interested in, they really want to do it. But if you're just offering it because you want to stand out from the crowd and use it as a marketing technique, but actually it's difficult for you to do it, then it's not a good practice. If you genuinely, I know there's a girl I know who shoots weddings entirely on film, and she sends the canisters off to Los Angeles. It's the only lab she trusts in Los Angeles. So every wedding she shoots, she then trusts British Airways or whichever freight it's going in to go to LA and come back again. But that's not part of her marketing. It's not, I shoot your wedding on film. Look at me, I shoot your wedding on film. Yeah. I can't even remember seeing it on her website. She just shows these beautiful pictures. These beautifully scanned images are amazing.
I think that's fantastic. That purist approach. That's a confidence thing in itself, isn't it? With the pressure of a day,
completely.
And you've got to know that camera what you're doing in terms of lighting.
Completely. And she wouldn't do it any other way. That's the way she does it. And now I think, people do it, gravitate to her because they know this, I think. But by and large, it's not her unique selling point. Okay, even though it probably is technically a unique thing. So she does it, but you get these guys who are, we'll come, we'll do your wedding, and we'll also film it. We'll also do a GoPro stop motion. We'll also run a reel of film off, and we'll Instax all of your guests. It really does take away from the core results. I honestly think that. And one of the reasons I've kept my the editing of my images have always been the same. All the black and whites. It's dependent on types of monitors and things like that. But generally, they're all the same: deep black and white, slightly warm tone. The colours are very filmic, edited to be filmic, if there's a real word. But it's always been that way. I've not changed it. And, I think having a uniformity in your editing style and your delivered images is going to be good for your brand. Kind of dipping in and out of processing styles, I think, in the long term will be damaging. How many times I look at my parents' wedding album and they're just beautiful black and whites, completely timeless. They're the same as the black and whites I try and produce now. I look at other family members' wedding albums, and it's white, soft focus. Modern ones are really over vintage, look at digital vintage. You're going to look at those in 20 years time and think, my word. You're not going to look at the image and think, oh yeah, remember this. You're going to look at the pictures and think, my God, look how outdated those pictures look. Whereas I think if you just go down the route of natural, I don't kind of over process. I don't a lot of the guys will do very, very HDR styled, and they're beautiful portraits, especially. A lot of the Asians do this, or the Asian market, and they are wonderful images. But for me, that's digital art. It's not the photograph. And they admit it. I'm not. It's not wrong that they do this. It's part of their. We will create a digital picture for you. But the time spent, and then at the end of it, it's in my mind, it's not a photograph. It's a digital piece, a digital art piece, which is fine. And the way that I work is everything is pretty much out of the camera. I might dodge and burn a little bit, crop, straighten. But other than that, there's nothing, I don't kind of remove things, I don't edit things, I don't over process, I don't use composites or anything like that. And that's because that's what I like. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but it's what I prefer to do. And so I think when the guys that dip in and out of different fashionable editing processes, just stick with what you like. If what you like is a very vintage, thing, then go for it, but stick with it and make it part of your brand rather than just following the trend and then actually hating it.
I mean, your images do stand out. You have that. People, I think, can obviously see, you mentioned earlier, you've got a distinctive style that you want people to book you for. But I'm interested, I know you do shoot colour as well, but have you had clients coming up and saying, Kevin, love the work, love that reportage, the guest shooting the wedding type discreet style, but can you do them in colour for us rather than black and white? Have you ever had that?
Occasionally, before the wedding it happens occasionally. Yeah. So sometimes clients will say, how much colour images can we get? And again, it comes down to this brand. So on most weddings will yield about 20% colour. Okay, so 80% black and white, 20% colour, maybe 70%. And so the website is geared that way. So there's approximately 70% black and white images on the website. The PDFs I send them, approximately 70% black and white. So they have it's in their mind, it's in their the psychology of their product buy-in is based on that. But occasionally I do get the question, usually from brides. The grooms typically gravitate towards the black and white stuff. I don't know whether it's a masculine thing or not, but the brides. And what I say to them is, look, if colour is a feature of the image, if the reason the image should be taken is because of colour, then it will be in colour. If the picture is being taken because of emotion or human interaction or whatever, then the chances are it will be in black and white, because I think personally that helps me gravitate to what's going on in the story. And occasionally I've definitely on one occasion last year I've lost a booking because they were adamant they wanted all images in black and white and colour. And you just say no. You just can't.
They were stipulating.
They wanted it. And I don't work that way. I shoot a lot of JPEG stuff, so I can't convert from black and white to colour. It's just not possible. And so you have to stand up for yourself and kind of do it that way. And occasionally after the wedding, I've had a few times where people have said, "Oh, we really like that picture, but my mum wants it in colour." And I will normally shoot the ceremony in RAW plus JPEG. So the ceremony ones I can usually convert. I can usually get away with that. But I will always do it with an element of, well, okay, and I will explain to them why it's in black and white. I explain to them first why it's like this. But if your mum really, really wants this picture in colour, I can do it for her. But I won't add it to the gallery. I won't add it to their final selection or anything. I'll do it and I'll email it. I might say, give me your mum's email address and I'll send it to her directly. Because there's a very important reason that things are done in black and white or in colour. And I have this. If you do black and white and colour work, then I think if you're doing a whole body of work, like a wedding is 400 pictures, there's a lot of stuff to deliver. And of course, they're not all going to be hero pictures or portfolio type pictures. But at the end of the day, the clients and their family and friends are going to look at this body of work. And I think, I have this idea of islands of colour and islands of black and white. So I don't want to just have a random colour image thrown in amongst 8 black and white pictures. It just doesn't sit well. So you have to be what's the word? You have to stand up for yourself, and you have to be kind of conscious of what you want to do also at the same time as trying to educate them. And yeah, I mean, it does happen. I do shoot a lot of black and white, and it all goes back to that branding thing, doesn't it? For the people that come to the website, many of them might go, he doesn't do much colour, and so we'll go off to someone else who does do colour. So hopefully by the time they've kind of got through, and if they read the stuff on the website, of which there's lots, they should get an idea. I have a whole page dedicated to black and white, and I even have an image on there where they can scroll up and down. On the black and white page, they can drag it and the same image converts to black and white colour as they drag it up and down. And I talk to them about why, and in that case, why that colour should be, why that image should be in colour. It's really about educating them. But I enjoy writing this stuff. I enjoy talking to them about it. I enjoy talking to clients about this stuff. So the management element of things, client management, is all there, and it's really not much of an issue. I don't worry about it, put it that way, as much as some other photographers who talk to me and they say, well, I'd love to do what you do, but I'm too scared. I'm too scared to put all documentary pictures, all black and white on there. So they will never go that route, because if they stay with the traditional photography on their website, that's what the clients are going to want. I mean,
you're obviously, so on that point on colour, you're obviously very particular about the images you want to give that client, because they never see what you've shot at the wedding until you deliver the book, I guess. Or
yeah.
Do you do just the images?
They all get the digital images, right, but most of them, I'd say 80% of them, get an album too. The albums are they're part of the packages, so all the packages come with an album, but sometimes we might have a discussion about if it's a midweek or something like that and they need to reduce the price. I'm not it's a business. It's not I'm happy to discuss things if necessary, to if it's not a core date or whatever, but I do really want them to have albums. So albums are part of the packages, the general starting point. But yeah, they do all get the digital images.
So when you've gone through the images and you've deemed that colour image to be one that you want to give, that's quite a decision for you, isn't it? Because that 70% in some cases, black and white images, here comes one that's really going to stand out. Coming back from 2009 then, do you find yourself getting more refined in the choice of, more picky about the kind of images you're shooting?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I look at the way that I used to shoot when, it's not a camera specific thing, but when I was shooting with my DSLR, I used to shoot on, what they call it, motor drive, or the equivalent of high speed burst, a lot. And you'd shoot a lot of images, and it's very arbitrary in terms of, it's almost spray and pray. You'd have thousands and thousands of images. Now, as time has gone by, regardless of what camera I'd be using, I definitely try and I kick myself in when I'm out there shooting at a wedding, and I think, right, slow down, watch, and I put the camera down. And sometimes I'll talk to clients about this in the beginning. I'll say to them, look, you know what, many times at the wedding you won't see me with my camera to my eye, because I'm not there to just run around going click, 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 click. I'm going to watch the characters. I'm going to watch where the light is. I'm going to look. I'm going to try and analyze what's going to make a good picture. And of course, you have to get the key things. You have to get the bride walking up the aisle and all that kind of stuff. But you, at the same time, you want to deliver them something from their from their guest side point of view, and that's what I focus on. So often that's not the bride and groom. I've shot weddings where I haven't even shot them doing their first kiss. I've shot, the granny up the end of the aisle watching them do their first kiss, for example, and things like that. And it's this idea of being an observer rather than a photographer, I think is kind of important for this style of photography, at least. And I don't mean that to sound arrogant in any way, shape or form, but the question about refining the style is more about refining what I see, I think, rather than, I'm much more aware of light and things now. I used to shoot with a Canon 1DX, which the ISO would go up to like, I don't know, 128,000, something like that. So all I would do is ride the exposure compensation dial and expect the camera to deal with it. It's a very lazy way of doing it, but it was good, it did its job. And now, I don't have the luxury of shooting at 128,000 ISO, so I look for light more and meter more sensibly, and the pictures are more refined in that respect, for sure. And when you shoot a lot of weddings, you can know that if it's a bright sunny day and people are outside, then normally when they're all mingling for the drinks reception, normally they're going to be colour. It's going to be a colour series, because there's flowers, there's bright dresses, colourful dresses, all that kind of stuff. And so with this idea of islands of colour and islands of black and white, typically you will go for it and you understand the flow of the day. A winter wedding, for example, the weddings I have coming up now, 3 weddings the next couple of weeks, they will be more, probably 90%, maybe even higher black and white. Because winter weddings often are later in the day, the colours are more muted, the weather is more muted, it's dark at 3 o'clock. So seasonal elements come into play too, definitely.
So just ending on the colour side then, you've moved exclusively now to Fuji from the Canon gear?
Fuji, yeah.
Let's say you're this official Fuji X photographer, but it must be really interesting having adopted those very early cameras. I think it was the X100 first for you, trusting the colour settings are great in the Fujis. I'm interested in whether when you switch to colour and shoot colour on some of those raw files, then are you tweaking those much when you get them back in?
A bit, not a lot.
Do you shoot JPEG colour? Yeah,
JPEG in colour too. Now, the thing about the move to the Fuji thing was that it introduced the electronic viewfinder. So what you're seeing in the viewfinder is what you're going to get. So you don't, if you're going to overexpose or underexpose, it's going to tell you in the viewfinder. You're good to go. So you can shoot more JPEG, and you can't, you're not kind of just thinking, I wonder, using the histogram to decide and everything. So the color stuff, for the Fujis that I use, they have the film simulation called Classic Chrome, which is great. I love it to bits. It crushes the blacks, it does everything I want. It's almost spot on to the finished color image that I need. Black and whites, they have black and white film simulations. I use a red filter. There's an option for a red filter, which is a very contrasty black and white. I do that, and then I add the warmth afterwards. Like I say, I have to straighten quite a few things. But it's mostly done in camera. The JPEG stuff, honestly, it's so simple, it's so quick. And actually, even when I shot Canon, I did shoot JPEG plus RAW. And I would use the camera, I think it's called Camera Vivid profile in the Canon systems. And that actually gave quite a crunchy JPEG. But the whole point of the shooting JPEG is that you have to be happy with the images that it's producing, obviously, but it's a workflow thing. I had this conversation with somebody once about a 1DX, and he was like, I can't believe you shoot JPEG on your Canon, on your 1DX. It's a £5,000 camera. And my counter argument was, well, I can't believe you spent £5,000 on a camera and don't trust it to do the thing it's meant to do, which is produce the images. And I still stand by that. And of course, it's not for everybody to shoot JPEG. And certainly, if you have to do a lot of retouching, or it's portrait work or whatever, then it's very different. But I think for street photography and candid wedding photography and social photography, when you have to deliver, when you're charged with delivering a lot of images, then I think you have to look at the workflow elements. From a business point of view, again, it sounds quite anal, but it's not as bad as it sounds. I do track how much time I spend on each project, each wedding. Very roughly. So, I'll put in, if I have meetings and if I have, the time at the wedding, etc. And then in post-production, how long I spend post-production. And the more time you spend doing this stuff, your bottom line is going to be decreased, your profit per hour. I'm a big believer that most wedding photographers in the UK would earn more money per hour flipping burgers at McDonald's than doing weddings, because they spend way, way, way too much time, especially on post-production, social media, all that kind of stuff, than is necessary. And that's not a bad thing. It's fine if time is a luxury for you. But if it's not, then and until people start tracking that, until people start looking at how much money they're making per hour, then they won't realise.
Is it really a career?
Is it really a business that's working? I used to take, when I first started, it used to take me about 2 weeks to edit. I used to edit everything in black and white, everything in colour, everything in sepia, and I ridiculously, I edited all of the images before doing the selections. Bonkers, absolutely bonkers. and then I was looking at this ratio and thinking, I'm earning, like £2 an hour. This can't be right. And if you earn £1,000 in 5 hours or you earn £1,000 in a week's worth of work, it's still £1,000, but it's your time that's the important thing, And so, I went on workflow courses. I sorted out. I moved away from. I was using Bridge and started using Lightroom, and really nailed that. And of course, I'm always learning different things. But from a workflow point of view, I think I'm quite happy. And one of those decisions was to start shooting JPEG when the mirrorless stuff came around, because it frees up so much time. Just simple things like card management is quicker. Editing is far quicker. Far quicker, and you really, if people want to do this as a business, then they have to look at that bottom line and what they're making.
On the bottom line, I guess still today, word of mouth recommendation is quite important, and I think in weddings it's quite a common theme that the bridesmaids that are there at the wedding are likely to be a bride themselves pretty shortly, in a lot of cases. So that word of mouth recommendation, and people talk. So I guess they may share, how much did Kevin charge you for that wedding? So if you are putting too much work in and doing a job far too cheaply, that's the expectation on the next client, isn't it? Particularly if they know the background to the job.
Yeah, completely, absolutely. And it's just, we all start somewhere, and we all charge lower rates when we started, and perhaps even do some stuff for free. But you have to move to a sustainable point pretty quick. It sounds boring as hell, but it's important to do a business plan, because my business plan tells my goals in my business plan are the holidays and the time off, the time out of the business. That's my rewards. And so much like an IT system is, you design an IT system backwards. You start with the final, we need to produce a report that does this, right? How do we do it? What are the inputs, etc.? So when I do my business plan, I start with the outputs. I need to spend this much time away from the business, and at the same time, I need to earn this much money to pay the mortgage, pay for the car, all that kind of stuff. And then I work backwards into that element, rather than, okay, well, if I charge £400 a wedding, then that sounds quite good. Just kind of finger in the air type stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who shoot weddings on the weekends, they work during the week, and that's fine. It's a lifestyle choice, and that's good for them. I'm talking specifically about people who want to make a business out of it. It's tough, it's a tough industry. Photography generally, I think, is a tough industry. But
it's got to be getting tougher. The wedding side,
absolutely.
Uncle Bob's buying the Fuji X-T1 now.
Yeah,
he's buying the X100T.
Yeah,
because he can't afford, perhaps in some cases, the 5D Mark III. So the pressure on wedding photographers to do it smarter. I mean, it's going to be great work, and yours is. But if you were to reflect candidly now, here we are, the end of 2015. What do you see as the picture for the next couple of years in terms of wedding photography?
I think you're right. There's throw a ball out the window and you'll hit a wedding photographer. That's what I would say. I think over the next few years, I think it will get worse in terms of numbers. But I am positive in that I think clients are becoming more appreciative of photography. And believe it or not, I think that's down to things like Instagram, Facebook, etc. Because although photography is far more accessible to them, and they're far more likely to, put a picture on Facebook and copy it and what have you, actually now I think because they're being exposed to so much of it, people are generally becoming more aware of what's good and bad.
Discerning.
Yeah, more discerning. And whereas a couple of years ago, people are like, oh yeah, my phone does pictures, and I just run this really nice filter on it, and look, it looks great. And actually now those same people are thinking, well, you know what, actually it doesn't look so good, and maybe there's this point in getting a professional. It is a very saturated market. I'm a great believer in that if the industries look after each other, then they will look after the industry. And so, I worry a little bit about the guys who are shooting, undercharging. They're very good photographers, but perhaps they don't need to charge so much because they've got another income, or they have a lot of money in the bank, and good for them. I wish I was in that situation sometimes. But the business element should still be the same. So I would encourage those people to still do a business plan, still, base it on a business rather than their other disposable income. And then that will give them a price they need to charge. It will give them a realistic price. And that will then support the whole industry. Of course, I'm dreaming here. This isn't going to happen. You're always going to get people who undercut. You're always going to get people who think, well, I don't need, I can just charge £400 because I just want cash in hand. But, I think realistically, people who want to do it semi-seriously, whether they have a day job or not, semi-seriously need to do this kind of stuff, because you get burnt out. My second year, I did 69 weddings. It was hard, really hard. And it was at the end of that year that I basically doubled my prices, shot half the weddings, booked off the August, did all of that kind of stuff, really refined it. But I know guys now, I still know people now who are shooting weddings. They're doing 50, 60 weddings a year. Some of them love it. Okay, don't get me wrong. Some of them love it and they charge really well for it and they're making a lot of money. But there are others who aren't charging enough and they're doing 60 weddings and they're burning out and they hate it. They hate it. And I say to them, well, put your prices up. Put your prices up to be more realistic. But then I won't get, where I live, people won't pay for that, etc. And it's just not true, because, there's always people around who will pay. There's a price point for everybody, of course. But I think that barrier, that middle range barrier between, say, £1,000 and £1,500, there are more photographers in that battlefield than above it, and even below it. And, you can use price as a... the only person I've ever known who has used price successfully as a unique selling point is a person who basically charges really low rates. He'll come to your wedding, he'll shoot your wedding on high-speed burst with a big memory card, and at the end of the day, he just gives you the memory card. Okay? There's no art in it. It's all spray and pray. He charges, but his unique selling point, and it's from an economical point of view, it works. He basically says, and he shoots every single day. He's shooting a wedding every day. This is what I'm going to do, and it is a unique selling point. He's chosen price as his unique selling point. But what he hasn't done is then introduce loads of difficulties to himself in terms of editing and processing. He walks away from the wedding. That's it. It's done. His job's done. 6 hours. Here's your memory card. Now, of course, there's not something I would want to do, and I wouldn't encourage necessarily people to do it, but he's the only person I know who's actually used price as a unique selling point in that respect.
I've never heard that, but did he train as a photographer?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. He shoots everything on medium fine JPEG, and there you go. It's just the way he does things.
Sounds like a plumber done good.
Yeah, probably is. But he has done good. He has done good. That's the thing about it. He's artistically wise. I don't know. I've not looked at any of the pictures, but he doesn't care about that. And the clients, he knows that there's there are clients out there who only have £300 to spend, and that's his market. This is what I'm going to do, and you're going to get your pictures at the end of the day. That's his marketing thing, and it works for him. But the real problem is for the people who are charging way too little and they're spending way too much time, and it goes down to this price per hour thing. If you're shooting any kind of commercial work, it's the same. It has to make sense on a profit ratio level. We go back to this idea of it being vocational, and which it is, but you still have to make sure you understand the business elements of it. Otherwise, that vocation would just be you're just going to fall out of love with it in the end. It would become way too stressful. Concentrate on your prices. Use the business plan to tell you what your price at. It's very simple. You put your outputs in, you decide what you need to live off, and then the business plan will actually tell you what you need to charge to live, and then you can decide whether you want to charge a bit more, a little bit less. You want to do a few more holidays, and it's not always as simple as that, of course, because you have economic factors such as the depressions and all that kind of stuff that come along. You get if you are in a geographical area where there's lots of other photographers, you have competition and everything. But you have to start with the base. That's the base point. It has to be. You can't just come into the industry and go, I think £500 will do. I'm sure that sounds like quite a lot of money to me, and then go for it, because you'll fail. You'll hate it. You'll fail. You might not fail in terms of not getting the bookings, but you'll fail from a business point of view.
If you had to go back, so just leaving the weddings, but if you had to go back 6-7 years and think, right, I was going to get into the wedding photography industry again as a profession, what do you regard as perhaps the best training approach in terms of skills and getting yourself immersed in it? What's the best way to learn?
Well,
and have some principles in terms of a professional photographer.
I honestly think I'm very lucky in that I'm not shackled by traditional training. Okay, and by that I mean I haven't gone to a wedding photography mentor, which a lot of people do, and being told that you have to stand your bride like this and the fingers need to be pointed this way and you have to get pictures of the rings with the groomsmen and all this kind of stuff. And I think that was probably my lucky break, really, so that I've always shot in a way that I've wanted to shoot. I don't have these kind of worries and concerns. And so I'm not sure about formal training like that in a wedding photography world. I would advise people more to look at the style that they want to shoot. Now, if they want to shoot very formal wedding photography, of which there's lots of people who do, and they do it beautifully, then yeah, of course, there's people out there. I would suggest they find a mentor rather than just go on random one-day courses. Most of the courses these days, I find, those types of courses are geared towards portfolio building. So the tutor they'll find a nice pretty model, they'll stand them up against the wall, they'll set the lights, they'll set the camera up, and you just click the button, and then you go home and put those on your website and say, look, I can do this at your wedding, which you can't. There's a lot of that goes on, and I don't think you necessarily learn much from that. I seriously, I would advise people to look at a long-term mentor who will talk to you about business, mostly business. You will find your style when it comes to photography. Understand the camera, understand business, understand your style. And if your style is documentary, books, street photography books, photo books, all of that kind of stuff really is influential stuff. The internet is full of useful information, about light and metering and all of these things that really in the beginning I didn't understand that well. I don't know. I seriously don't think it's that worthwhile to just go on these one-day courses. Teach yourself to be a wedding photographer in a day. I did them. I went on them too, but I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn the stuff that I really needed to learn.
Were you ever tempted to request, to assist or be a second shooter?
Yes, and I did do that actually. I did that for 2 weddings. A really good guy up in Birmingham called Steve Corson. Very different style, but he was kind enough. I put a message out on a forum, and he was kind enough to say, "Yeah, come along." And so I went along with him. And actually, what that did was it helped me decide on the stuff I didn't want to do rather than the stuff I wanted to do, So Steve...
Guess what they might be.
Yeah, exactly. And Steve's a fine photographer, a great photographer. And he, and he was doing all the group shots and all that kind of stuff. And, I kind of thought, I don't know, I'm not sure I want to do this. But, and so, yeah, it helped in that respect. So, yeah, absolutely, reach out to people in your area. They can often help, and they usually will. Most guys have got integrity, and most people are helpful. I say most, not everybody, of course. Some people won't tell you anything. But you absorb the industry, absorb the good things that are out there, podcasts like this, and there's loads of stuff on the internet and interviews and things like that. I think it's really important. You can normally see when people are telling a woolly story or they're putting fluff over your eyes. But like I say, I think if people look after the industry will look after them.
I mean, YouTube, I guess, and iTunes in some ways is saturated with videos, podcasts. I mean, I've spoken to you about this before. I think I asked you a question a while back about the content you put in your site, and I think you did say then you were quite interested in video. But what do you think about those different types of media to reach, I guess, different types of audience? Because some people will listen to a podcast, but some people would prefer to see pictures and watch the video.
Sure.
Well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because from an SEO point of view, Google actually likes moving media these days. So I do what we call photo films. Actually, a good friend of mine, Neil James in Newbury, he's kind of the grandfather of the photo film idea, and he does them superbly well. So I will do, not every wedding, but I will do a slideshow essentially set to music. And they go down really well. And I have one on my homepage, 20 images, and really I'm using that as a tool to kind of filter. I essentially say to them, press play, look at these 20 pictures, and if you like them, carry on. If you don't, go somewhere else. But from a Google point of view, it's very clever too, because they are interacting with your website, and Google likes that. They like it when they do things, and people are more visual these days. You only have to look at the main news channels, news websites, Sky News and all that kind of stuff. The days of static text and just random pictures are gone. It's all videos and interviews with the news reporters and everything. People like that. People like to use it on their phone and watch this stuff. I tend to I go down the route of doing a photo film, and I will also put my favourite stills underneath, so people have a choice. They can see the stills, they can analyse the stills, or they can look at the photo film. But when I do a photo, anything to do with kind of what I call it moving media, I don't know whether that's a technical term or not. But when I do these things, I spend more time thinking about the audio and the sound, aligning the slide, the transitions to the beats and things like that, because that makes it very powerful, especially the emotion stuff. And you can really, really capture people's imagination by putting a good audio track to it. Like I say, Neil's great at that kind of stuff. And
is he the guy that also does voiceovers on his
correct
stuff?
Yeah,
that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
again, it's emotion, but coming from a different angle.
Yeah, so Neil used to be a Radio 1 DJ, believe it or not. Right. And you can still find things with Mr. Blobby and him on the Radio 1 road shows and what have you, on the internet. But he has this voice. He has this great voice. I sound like a drunk Joe Pasquale if I try to put a voiceover on my stuff. So I don't do any of that. I also don't record the speeches and the audio from the day. I have done it, and again, Neil does this, as other people do, and they intermingle the speeches and the vows and everything with this photo film. And it's good. It does definitely set you apart, and clients love it, and they will pay for it. But for me, because I have this like purist idea of this documentary photographer, I don't want to be going up to them and putting my hands in their pockets and wiring them up and all that kind of stuff on a wedding day, because for me that I'm just not comfortable with that. But other people do it, and they do it really, really well. But this whole idea of the website and moving media and stills and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Really, what I try and do with the website is make it a portal. I want it to be a place that people come and they know that on a Monday there's going to be on a Tuesday there's going to be a new wedding blog. On a Monday there's going to be a why I love this image thing. Make it very thematic. And they may never buy pictures. They may never buy a wedding, but they might be interested in Fuji, so they might be interested just generally in black and white photography, or they might be interested in the audio of these things. But make it a place that people enjoy coming to. It's really important to make your website easy to navigate and easy to be on, enjoyable, looks good on mobile, all that kind of stuff. And you get people who will appreciate it, and then they will share it. And the sharing of the content is the most important thing. The social media sharing is super important. But yeah, I kind of embrace all that stuff. I enjoy the photo films, but it takes me so long to do them. I'm going back to that profit per hour thing. I need to sort that out.
But one of the genuinely nice things I like about your sites in particular is you've got two audiences though, haven't you? You're a canny bloke, Kevin, because you've got the clients, but you've also got the photographers, and you are giving back, I think, in terms of explaining how you do things and your approach. Has the Fuji, that association with Fuji, was that a happy accident really in terms of you developing? It obviously suited your approach in terms of discreet reportage, not wanting to have a heavy big, the 1D up at your eye.
Yeah.
You are shooting more discreetly. How do you feel that's adopting those cameras and working with Fuji? How does that help your business profile, exposure?
Yeah, again, there's two strands to that. It was a happy accident. I took delivery of the original X100 way back in 2011, I think it was. I took it to a wedding with me that day. It came in the morning. I took it that afternoon. I only took a handful of shots with it, and in fairness, it wasn't particularly good in those days. It needed, firmware came and sorted it out. But what I did do is I went home and I put those images online. Because I'd pre-ordered it so early, I was one of the first people to get a copy of the camera. I put it online, and the next day I'd had 35,000 hits on my website. Emails from it turns out that it was the first real world review of this X100 on the internet, pretty much. And so, that was a complete accident. But what happened in terms of using the camera, I realised straight away that there was a lot of potential with it. And I really wanted it to be great, but it just wasn't there then. And then they released the X Pro 1, and I was writing for Professional Photographer magazine at the time, and they said, do you want to review it? I said, yeah, okay. So they sent me a set with the 3 launch lenses, the X Pro 1. And then suddenly it all clicked how this stuff was going to work for me. I didn't know at the time that, I was happy with my Canon gear. They were producing good images. I was really happy with them. But something just wasn't, I didn't know what it was. And I still don't really know what it was. But what happened when I got the smaller cameras was that I started getting in closer, shooting the real types of images that I love to take, real close, kind of all this hugging stuff and the emotion and all that. And I wasn't doing that with the Canons, because as soon as I got too close, people, and clack, 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 big lenses, the opportunity was going away. And I'm very conscious that I never want to interact. I never want to interfere with anything. Everything, of course, sometimes people see you and they do, they react to you. But, I really want the clients, when they look back at their wedding pictures, to think, yeah, do you remember when that happened? Rather than, oh yeah, do you remember when the photographer took a picture of us doing that? And so using these smaller cameras, and it just so happened that Fuji at the time were the ones coming out with the stuff. If Canon had come out with a tiny mirrorless camera at the time, then I would have gone down that route, and I couldn't afford a Leica, but that's what was appealing to me, that whole idea. And I couldn't shoot in a rangefinder, fully manual rangefinder just wouldn't have worked for me. So these things were coming onto the marketplace and I was seeing my pictures were different. I'm not necessarily better, but they were different, and I was really enjoying using them. And so, yeah, it just kind of went from there, and I embraced everything that they brought out. And in the end, they asked me to do something at the photography show, focus on imaging or whatever it was at the time. Can we use some of your pictures? Really like them. And then they invited me to become, and I just said yeah. And I was writing stuff, and I was showing. And I like writing about things, and I like showing pictures, and I like saying how I shot things and stuff. So I was doing that. I was getting a lot of information, a lot of feedback from the community, and all that. And then Fuji said, we'd like to invite you to become an X photographer, which at the time I think there was like 2 or 3 in the UK maximum. I was certainly the first wedding one, and now worldwide there's a whole load of us, and. I'm very proud of the fact that I only use Fuji equipment. That's it. I don't have any Canon stuff anymore. I don't have any of it. There's a whole load of X photographers out there who do, you shoot a bit of both, which is fine. But my personal preference is, if you're to be an ambassador of some kind, then you should really embrace it fully rather than partly. But that's my own personal gripe, I suppose. And but Fuji as a company are very forward thinking. They listen. I've been extremely lucky. They've flown me to Japan twice, where I've spoken to the engineers, I've spoken to the designers. I've sat there with the guys that develop the color, mathematical equations that deal with all the color and everything, and these are the same guys that used to build the Velvia and Astia film stock in the day. These guys are old guys, you know, but
that's
they're the
nice
same
thing.
people.
Yeah, I think that comes across, that I think there is an appreciation of that legacy, isn't there?
Absolutely.
As one of the camera manufacturers.
Yeah. And they certainly listen, and you know they look at everything that's out there. They listen to the people. I'm kind of used as a little funnel, I think. So I will get a lot of information and I will feed it back to them. They can't obviously ask every single person, but they're very open on social media. They, for example, at the photography show coming up in March or April, whenever it is, they will have a big stand and they will have all of their product managers there. Even the guys from Japan will come over and they will stand there and they will talk to people. They will listen. And they take it on board. And you know, I've seen things on cameras, prototypes of cameras, that you know they've said, "Do you think this will work?" And the four of us that were there have said no, and they've taken it away. You know, and they've added things that we've suggested, and that's an amazing thing to be able to A, to be part of it, of course. But B, to know that they've always got your back, really. And as I always say to Fuji, you know, although I'm an ex-photographer, it's not a paid, it's not an ambassadorial. I'm not obliged to say good things about them, and I will say what I think is a problem with certain things and stuff online. And if something comes along that is better and suits my business more, and Fuji can't keep up with that, then I would move. Certainly, I don't think brand loyalty at the expense of client happiness is a good thing.
But that move on their part to revisit the emotion and some of the just appreciation of analog film in the design of those cameras, particularly the X Pro one. Because at this time when we've got this, you've got the Impossible Project, there's people harkening back to film and analog. For them to take the digital camera and give people that aesthetic and have that in their hands, it's quite a smart move, isn't it?
Very smart move. I mean, Fujifilm weren't really in the marketplace up until they started doing this again. And of course, I surround myself in the Fuji world, so I only typically hear about that. But, generally in the industry, the Fuji name is more prevalent now than it was certainly 4 or 5 years ago. And this is for the X photography or the X series. But the interesting thing is the Instax printer that they do, this little kind of printout thing, it's phenomenally successful, absolutely phenomenally successful. And it's print. It's a little piece of paper comes out the bottom. It's instant, isn't it? These Instax, and that's a great thing for them too. But they absolutely took the bull by the horns, and I think to a certain extent it was probably accidental on their part. A good accident in that how it happened and how the X100 came along. I don't think they realised how excited people would be by it. And the whole retro thing, my original X100 is there, and this whole look and feel of it, I never had any. I kind of looked at the X100 in the beginning and thought, oh yeah, nice looking camera, but can it do what I need it to do? I don't care. The reason why I love the X Pro 1 so much is because it's a little black box. That's all I'm interested in. I don't care about the chrome and the glossy bits and all that kind of stuff. I like the tactile nature of the mirrorless cameras. I like the fact that I can control everything without having to dig down into menus and all that kind of stuff. I love the black versions of the cameras. I typically have that. I don't have my X100T here, but if you saw it, you'll see I've got it all taped up in black because I only have a chrome version of it, and so it's all taped up. One of the things I said to them a long time ago is, and as did lots of other people, is, people buy these cameras, documentary photographers, reportage journalists, all that kind of stuff, and they're not necessarily going to buy them because of what they look like. They're going to buy them because they're small and discreet. So if you can do black versions of it, then I think you'll find people will buy those. So they did, and they do sell. But at the same time, they're also catering for the retro marketplace. There's a lot of people, especially in Japan. In Japan, the look and feel of the device is far more important than probably anywhere in the Western world. They're very much, yes, look, but this retro camera looks great, which is great. And so in Japan, they're selling, loads of them too. So for the people who want that retro look and feel, it definitely fits the bill, but not at the expense of functionality, which is the important thing,
Yeah.